communauté caribéenne. BCN, Boston Caribbean Network Television, c'est première télévision communautaire et commerciale qui est là pour promouvoir valeurs culturelles, sociales et historiques pays d'Haïti. Une télévision qui l'a 24/24 pour voir toutes nouvelles nationales et internationales. D'ailleurs, si vous avez aimé produire émission par sur radio ou bien sur télévision BCN, ou avez aimé nous filmer service dimanche l'église ou, pas de problème, juste relais dans 617 290 16 60. 617 290 16 60 pour plus d'informations. Et pas oublier, nous sur toutes plateformes comme Roku, Facebook, Firestick, YouTube et nous sous chaîne 31.3 local. BCN, c'est télévision pour communauté caribéenne.
Mes amis, on cause. Bonjour tout le monde, bon dimanche. N'a commencé show pour nous dire happy Mother's Day to all the amazing, wonderful moms out there, especially my gorgeous mom. She's the queen of all queens. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms in my life and all the moms watching today. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Moi, je dis tout le monde bonne fête de mère américaine. Parce que nous connaissons haïtiens, nous avons deux fêtes de mère. So, nous avons les jeudi et puis dans fin mois. So, nous avons célébré tout le mois pour maman. Merci tout le monde qui branché, en cause live. So, si vous regardez Kounia, relais aux amis, relais aux familles, share it with everyone pour vous regarder. Je nous connais, en cause is bilingual. So, today will be primarily in English, but I'll say a few things in Creole. Et nous avons un show très spécial. Chaque dimanche, nous toujours dit show spécial. C'est la vérité, il est toujours spécial. Jeudi, je pense que malgré notre célébrer fête des mères, c'est une belle occasion, mais nous avons besoin de prendre temps ça tout pour nous célébrer un monde qui who's done an amazing thing, just going through something that could have been that has been very devastating, but she's recovered so well and she's thriving. So, viens en anglais parce que moi, meilleur, c'est moi stroke awareness. So nous avons besoin de un petit temps pour nous parler de stroke. Nous connaissons en cause, nous venons avec information pour nous faire éducation pour aider tout le monde. Il y a des choses que vous ne doit pas fin connaître vraiment et puis nous apporter information about. So nous avons fait un show déjà sur stroke avec Dr Nadia, mais je dis que c'est nécessaire pour venir avec un jeune monde qui est affecté avec stroke pour nous ouais et pour nous attendre histoire en tout et puis pense nous encourager nous tout pour make sure qu'on a prend soin de tête nous. But si vous sont monde ou bien une famille qui était grand stroke, then we can la vie continue et we can recover. So today we have a special guest in studio because right now we have a special guest in studio. I'm looking because Dominique is doing something I'm not sure, so I'm just looking at him. We have a special guest in studio. May is Stroke Awareness Month, and I wanted to take some time for us to talk about stroke, not just talk about it, because we've done a show in the past with Dr. Nadia, if some of you remembered, Nadia Valentin, where we talked about stroke, talk about the signs and the recovery process and everything. But I also wanted to take some time to talk to someone who's been impacted by stroke personally, because I think often people think stroke, you think older folks, but that's a myth. There's a lot of young folks that have been impacted by stroke and how you're living with it after the fact and thriving. So I'm so happy to have this guest. She is not new to BCN. She's been here before as a guest, but at that time we were talking more so about domestic violence because she does amazing work in the community. But I'm so honored that she decided to share this personal story with me and with the audience because I think this will impact and it will have such a great impact on the folks watching and it will also encourage you. So while we're celebrating, it is a celebration. This is going to be a very lively celebratory show because we're celebrating Lola thriving after a stroke. So please help me welcome Lola Remy, Esquire, met Lola, for a second time to Uncause. Welcome, sis.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you so much for doing this. Yeah, well, nous connaissons Lola parle Creole too, but today we'll keep it to English. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Doing well.
And I'm sure the folks are shocked to even people who are not personally friends with you are shocked to hear that you, from how beautiful you look, that you've suffered a stroke. And so I wanted for them to see the face. It's a young face that, yes, this happened. So how long ago?
It was the end of 2000. What year are we? 2023. So end of 2020, right around December, the beginning of December, when we were all in very deep COVID restrictions and lockdowns and all of that. So that's when the actual event was, but still recovering, and I still consider myself in the thing. Yeah. So.
And so prior to this, you are a young, healthy person. And I won't ask you to share your age, but people can see that you're young.
Sure.
And we've talked about this.
Less and less young every day.
No, but you're young. Yeah. You're younger than me, so you're young.
Yeah.
And you were working out. You were someone in shape, because people are thinking, oh, it's someone who might be more overweight and whatever. You were working out in shape, and this happened.
Yeah.
So walk us through the process of what actually happened.
Okay. Well, the process is a little bit of a windy road, which is why when people talk about stroke and how difficult, well, life is generally, I like to really highlight that it's a series of things that can really add up to something that you don't even foresee. And I was making the best decisions I could make at the time that I had to make them. But the story starts long before the stroke, when I was diagnosed with fibroids. So lots of things happened in between, including the pandemic. So I ended up having to pause everything I was doing in terms of taking care of those.
And a lot of Black women
Yeah.
are facing or struggling with fibroids. I know I've had a few friends who've had surgery, so it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So I was one of the women. And when I finally was able, because the removal of fibroids is elective surgery, which I didn't realize. So
Which is ridiculous, if you ask me, but that's a different topic.
They weren't being scheduled during the pandemic. So when I finally was able to get in for the surgery, and I understood, because the hospitals were overwhelmed by other emergencies, and I was okay. So after I had my fibroids removed, I was still having a lot of symptoms, and I ended up being prescribed birth control to help minimize the bleeding I was still having related to the surgery and the fibroids. They couldn't remove all of them, and before you go and have that surgery, you do have to agree to certain things, like how much can they take. If they have to take the whole thing, are you okay with that? And I was not quite ready to make that decision. Again, it's like the decisions you're making at the time you're making them. If I'd known then what I know now, I'm not sure if I would have made the same decision, but had the surgery. They couldn't get everything out. I was still having a lot of bleeding. I was prescribed this birth control, and I started feeling not great. But, we wait and see. We're not running into the hospital. We're Haitians. We're strong. We got it. We'll just take care. We're going to get through, and we'll call the doctor maybe.
What kind of symptoms were you having when you started not feeling like yourself?
Mostly headaches. Lots of headaches. I was also having some lightheadedness. I'd never had migraines before, so I didn't know if I was having migraines. I didn't know if I was hungry. I thought it could be anything. So I wasn't feeling great, but I thought I would talk to my doctor later. And we're still doing telehealth at that point, and I had a telehealth visit scheduled for like December 10th. So I said, I'm just going to let her know that I don't think the birth control is helping, because I'm still bleeding so much, and I'm now starting to have headaches, and I'm feeling lightheaded, and I'm having hard time breathing. Like, little exercise was making me not feel well, like I was not sure that I needed to be taking them anymore. So I was planning to ask her if I could go off of them. December 6th rolled around, and I woke up feeling fine. It was time to get Christmas presents ready, and that was also a time when we weren't seeing family. So I thought, let me start ordering presents and have them delivered. So I thought I'd stay home, make myself a little day. I had some chocolate in the fridge that I'd brought from Haiti. La Passimizena Frisée. I was like, let's make some chocolate. And because
some Haitian chocolate, authentic, yummy chocolate.
So I took my time, I made the chocolate, and I'm just relaxing with the chocolate. And I thought, let me put a little alcohol in it for fun.
Yeah, why not?
Right.
A little rum?
A little. It was peppermint schnapps, but.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing classy, nothing classy.
Okay.
So I started having the chocolate, and I started feeling weakness. And I thought, wow.
On one side?
Yeah. I thought this alcohol is really doing it for me. What is going on? So I thought, maybe I'm doing too much with this alcohol. Let me stop that. But the weakness didn't go away. And I was texting and ordering things online, and my fingers stopped working. And I thought, I'm done with the chocolate. Put it aside. I started eating, and I thought maybe I'll take a nap and see what happens. Took a nap, woke up, still felt weakness, but I was mostly fine. So I called my husband, who was out for the day, and I said, I'm starting to feel not that great. What do you think? And he says, well, I'm in Rhode Island. It's going to take me a while to get back. So if you need to go to the doctor, you should go. And I said, I'm not going to a doctor. I called the urgent care, and I told them I'm feeling a little bit lightheaded still, weakness in one side. And they said, we can't tell, but come in. And I said, I'm not going in. At this point, so the symptoms started around noon. I called my husband at 4. I called urgent care at 6. And I still was feeling like, this is a mystery. So I Googled it. I went online, and I'm like, muscle weakness, one side. And Google said, carpal tunnel, stroke. I was like, who's having a stroke? I'm a young person.
Not my young self. Yep.
I'm healthy. I'm fit. I eat well. During the pandemic, I was cooking all my own meals. I mean, so was everybody else, but I was doing so well, and I thought, there's no way I'm having a stroke. I don't have blood pressure issues. I don't have cholesterol issues.
And you're not diabetic. These are all the things that they tell you that puts you on the potential. Yeah.
So at this point, I'm like, Google's wrong for the first time. For the first time ever, Googling it. So I go back to minding my own business, still weak, hardly able to lift my left hand, and it's getting more and more difficult to do things. And at the time, I was a fitness instructor, and we're doing fitness classes virtually. So I thought, well, the next day I have to teach a fitness class on Zoom, so I need to be able to hold things. Let me go try to hold something. I went to my weight room, and I could not get my hand to close around the weight. That was the real sign for me. So I called an Uber, because that's all I had. At this point, it's 8 o'clock. So I'm like, all day. They say fast. I was not fast.
That's what I'm thinking as you're saying that.
Yeah. So I get to the emergency room, and people are there. They're very kind, but all I wanted to do was go home. They put me in the MRI right away, and they couldn't see anything.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm in the waiting room. A family comes in. They're describing COVID symptoms, and that puts me in a tizzy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm leaving. I threatened to go. The nurses all come out. They're like, please don't go. COVID is under control. We have a separate space. We're going to take you in. Let's just stay. So they put me in a room, and I start texting people to tell them I'm not going to teach my class the next day, because at this point we're going on midnight between the time I'm admitted, getting the MRI and everything.
And they still have not diagnosed you with a stroke?
Still nothing on the imaging. I'm just in a room because it's late and they don't want to send me home. At this point, my husband has arrived to the hospital, but he can't come in because
it's COVID.
It's COVID.
Wow.
So I'm texting, and I put my phone down, and I start having something I recognize as a seizure, which I'd never had before, but I'd known about them. I'm like convulsing and shaking, and I don't know what to do, and I can't find the nurse call button. Finally, it stops, and I find the button. The nurse comes in, and she says, are you okay? And I said, I think something just happened. And she said, all I saw was a little blip on the monitor. Here's the button. If something happens again, just hit it right away. So she puts it right on my belly, and then she goes back out. I go back to texting like, hey, babe. Yeah, I'm out. I don't know. I think they're going to keep me overnight, so let me just text one more person, blah, blah. I put the phone down, and I think it was being triggered by light. I don't know anything about medicine, but that's what I suspect. I put the phone down, and then I have another one. Luckily, at this point, the button was on my belly, and I was able to hit it. People flood the room, and I'm totally out of it, and all I could think is, why is nobody helping? How come this is not stopping? And I'm just shaking so violently. I was nervous I was going to hit my head on the side of the bed. Next thing I know, apparently it's 2 weeks later. Apparently.
Wow.
Yeah. Apparently I had 6 seizures total.
Wow.
And a piece of my skull was missing. Yeah. So we'd had brain surgery, a feeding tube. What else? Everything. So 2 weeks had gone by. And by then it's like December 17th or something. I remember that day because it was a snow day, and I could hear the nurses talking about how terrible it was outside. So it's like, wow, where did the time go? So that's basically, and then a week later, I was finally transferred out of the ICU and into rehab. Rehab is a strong word. It was basically a skilled nursing facility because at that point I was not eating, I wasn't able to eat by myself.
So I make this face. I make this face because I work at an acute rehab, and the fact that they would send you a young person, because at this point had they diagnosed that you had a stroke?
They had figured it out.
They sent a young person who is fully independent prior to a skilled nursing facility, which is the worst thing ever. But anyways, we'll
is that bad? Is that
yes.
poor protocol? Oh, okay.
It should have been an acute rehab, inpatient acute rehab, where you would get the most therapy. So that's what I'm trying to not ask which hospital, because okay.
Well, luckily I was only in there 2 weeks.
Okay.
Luckily.
But that's still 2 weeks. That time you needed to start doing intensive therapy.
I had therapy there, but not intensive. I was
an hour probably. 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
20 minutes of sitting up in bed. And at that point, I don't know what you're supposed to do, but I wasn't able to do anything. Yeah. Somebody had to change everything. I was getting bed baths. I was bedpans. It was, I don't know.
And this is why we're doing this. I always say when I do this show, if I'm able to touch one person, like you're saying, you didn't know what to do. So whoever's watching this, if something happened, you're hearing Lola's story, then you can know, oh, okay, these are the signs to recognize. So you woke up 2 weeks later and they say you suffered a stroke.
Yeah.
And at this point, you're like, what?
Yeah. And it didn't really, I was like, what does that mean? Google said that, but Google was wrong. And when I was still in the ICU, my sister is a nurse, and I had no idea what kind of nurse she was. Turns out she works at Brockton Rehab with stroke survivors. So she knew everything. So luckily, we did have some advocacy inside the family, and all I knew was that she was calling all the time and was making sure I was getting the medications that would have the least side effects and getting the care that I needed, not just what was prescribed. So that was really helpful. But I'm not really quite getting the stroke word. So I'm in there because that's all I can do. I'm kind of groggy, and for some reason I was in this weird window where they were letting people in. So I had one guest a day, visitor. So my family was just like rotating doors. Like they kept coming, and the staff allowed it as everybody was, as long as everybody was safe. So it was a little less lonely than I imagined it could be. And then it became later because I was in there for quite a while. So that was great. And the first time it hit me, like I never said the word myself. I heard it. I never saw myself, so I didn't know what I looked like. I had no idea what had happened. And I think for a long time at that point, I'm communicating, I'm talking, and I'm telling people what I need. Only later that I realized I wasn't speaking. Nothing was coming out. So I'm thinking I'm so clear, So
you had some dysphagia, and you were phasic as well.
Seems so. I don't. Yes.
Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
So,
and if you guys are wondering who Lola was talking to, we do have someone who's kind of like her partner in recovery who's going to join us a little bit later, and you'll get to see her face and get to know who she is and how she's working with Lola in her recovery. That's just in case the audience was wondering, who's she talking to?
I'm not a clinician, so I don't know what the words are. I still don't know.
Yeah.
I was not communicative. I was not getting through.
So in your mind, you're talking.
Yeah, I'm saying what I want for Christmas. I'm saying I'm telling my husband, make sure that everybody gets their gifts that I ordered. I'm telling him about what we're supposed to do. And it's, at this point, it's middle of December, and I'm like, you have to make sure to go to Market Basket and get everything for the soup.
Well, yeah.
Because if we wait, we're going to get the terrible veggies. So just go. And the nurses were so funny, and they were like, yeah, you'll be home in time. Okay. And my family was also so encouraging. Everybody's like, yeah, we'll make sure we have the soup. And he says, yeah, I'll just go today. Luckily, he didn't go because I was not home 10 days later.
Yeah.
That was not how the recovery went.
So you woke up, now you're at a skilled nursing facility. You're there for 2 weeks, and then what happened?
So while I'm there are so many tests. They're testing, can I speak now? I started being able to communicate again. So what's my speech like? Can I swallow? That was the first big hurdle. Like, am I safe to eat pureed foods? Am I safe to eat soft foods? And it was like an escalation. That was every day we had, like, bumping me up to different levels. So that started, and then they started getting me to sit up right away so I could get my stamina back. And those 20-minute sitting exercises were the hardest things I've done to date. I had a tube in my stomach. I couldn't feel anything on my whole left side. And the goal was to just not fall over. And I never realized how much core control everything takes. So that's what we're doing in there. Eventually, I start walking.
And you say walking because it wasn't.
It was not. I could not feel my legs. I couldn't feel my feet. So we would go to the therapy gym area, and I would try to stand. And it just felt like I was standing on just one leg, and like this leg was just dead weight. So we did that for a little while, but I'm nothing if not determined. I was not going to not walk because what's the goal? And we practiced a lot of me transferring out of the bed into wheelchair. So that was like, those were the basic exercises. Eat, speak, get my words back. How many words do I know? How quickly can
And
I
is this still at the skilled nursing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
you haven't gone to the inpatient rehab yet?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So finally, after about 2 weeks, I got cleared to move. So a lot needs to happen with insurance and care management and everything. So I was getting all these updates, which I only sort of understood that I was finally going to be transferred to a rehab place.
An inpatient rehab. So that's weird that they did it backwards. That they sent you a skilled nursing, which is a lower level, and then they moved you up to a rehab. That's interesting.
Oh, is it? Is it different?
Typically, you go straight, unless medically you're complex, you'd go to an LTAC, where it's mainly focused on the medical piece. You get some rehab. But then after a stroke, especially a young person, inpatient rehab usually is the best option. If people don't recover, then you would downgrade to a skilled nursing. So that's interesting that they kind of did it backwards.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it was because of the pandemic too, with beds being available.
So that was the thing I was aware of, is that they were waiting to transfer me.
Yeah.
Pending availability elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I was waiting. Every day I would get these updates. Oh, a bed should be happening anytime now. But then one morning was like, the bed is here. And we're just having to move everything within like an hour.
Which is the best place you needed to be, that inpatient rehab.
Yeah. So I'm like, honey, you gotta come get all the stuff. You gotta come get everything. And of course you can't come in. And so many people, I'm so fortunate in my life, so many people sent flowers and things, and I've basically been living in that space and I had all this stuff, so it all had to be cleared out and transported. I had a plant that was the size of this table, honestly, like this lily that came, and it all had to be packed up and taken not to the hospital.
Yeah, but that says a lot about you, because there's so many, you have so much love around you.
Yeah.
So for those of you who just tuned in, we are talking to Lola, who is thriving after a stroke. I know it's Mother's Day, but we wanted to do this show today to celebrate Lola's recovery, to also provide you with some information. Pour même qui fait brancher qu'on y a parlé avec Lola, Lola te souffri, te fait un stroke quelques années de cela. Nous devons prendre un petit temps pour nous parler de ça, parce que je connais stroke affecté un pile monde, et un pile fois monde pense que c'est grand monde qui gagne stroke, mais ouais, son jeune dame qui était en santé et puis la partager l'histoire là avec nous. En résumé, il dit nous que il était gagne freebom, il fin faire opération et puis il est toujours abstain, il bali birth control, par contre qui me dit ça en créole, excusez. Birth control, et puis living quand il a living remarqué qu'il a tête fait mal et puis il perdre tant qu'on bon encore il pas living faible, et puis l'aller et puis il fait had a few seizures, and then quand il vient dire qu'il fait un stroke. C'est une jeune dame, nous avons les jeunes, c'est un monde qui peut faire les 40 ans. You weren't 40 yet.
I had turned 40 like 2 months.
Yeah, so vous pouvez imaginer, nous pas voulons penser que stroke c'est l'heure au grand monde seulement. Nous voulons partager information ça avec tout le monde, parce que je pense que c'est important pour nous informer tête nous et puis pour nous connaître tout qui bon procès qui ça pour nous faire si ça t'arrive nous tout. So you moved to the acute rehab, and then what happened?
And then I'm there 2 months. Therapy became very intense. It was 5 hours a day, including what they called recreational therapy, which was basically orchard that was supposed to be fun. And at the whole time, I was not allowed to have guests or visitors. I had my iPad with me, so I was having FaceTime calls and things like that. It was a very sad and lonely time. So I'm in there.
Which is hard because after a stroke, the chances of having depression is so high. So then you put in the pandemic, not being able to have your support. You are a true survivor.
I was on the medication.
Yeah.
That's what I'll tell you. I had severe anxiety. I was not sleeping well. My brain was swollen, so I think I was just tired generally. But also I was heavily medicated because I couldn't fall asleep by myself. I couldn't stay asleep. I couldn't feel comfortable. So finally, I had to ask that I stop being drugged because it didn't feel good to be so out of it all the time. So eventually we had to make a plan about how I could step down from the intense numbing. But that's basically how we got through the first month or so. So I'm doing the therapy. I'm going speech therapy, which was frustrating because I talk a lot.
She's an attorney, in case you guys didn't know.
In the blabbermouth. If nobody asks me a question, I'll answer it anyway. I'll put the question out there and I'll just start talking about it. So
I can appreciate that. I see you, sis.
Thank you. So not being able to think of the words I wanted to use was one of the hardest parts of the recovery. But eventually the words do start coming back, and I'm basically seeing somebody every single day, well, except Sunday. And then we were supposed to do these puzzles and play these games, and I always prided myself as somebody who was like a thinker and a puzzle doer, but I really couldn't even solve very basic puzzles. I was trying to do word searches and coming close to tears with them, and I actually had many emotional outbursts with my speech therapist. Luckily, she was very patient and she understood, and we took a lot of breaks, but it was a process. And for everybody who wasn't seeing me, the process, I started documenting in the hospital. So if anybody's interested, I do have a pretty public Instagram. So I started documenting in the hospital because I wanted to share with my family what was going on. And for the people who were seeing all the time, I think the relief was just so immense that I was going from bedbound, speechless, not eating, to actually making even small conversation. So everybody was just kind of like, phew, big sigh. Finally, I had a conversation with somebody who hadn't seen me, hadn't heard about me, but who cared about me a lot. And she said, "What's wrong with your voice?" And I said, "What do you mean?" Says, "You just sound so flat. Are they doing something for that?" Like, it never occurred to me that
you were depressed.
And that I wasn't modulating or enunciating. So that was another goal that we set, because I wanted to be able to go home and have conversations with people and work on that. So the nice thing about being in the hospital is that they really listen to the goals that I set for myself.
That's so good to hear, because in healthcare often people say the opposite, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And so
kudos to that hospital that I know, but I won't say because I'm not advertising.
I think it really helps to have advocates on the outside and to be able to be hopeful and know that there are things you want to work towards, because I certainly know people who had stroke. At this point, I know a lot of stroke survivors, but back then I didn't know anybody who had ever had a stroke. So I had so much hope that I could recover. It didn't occur to me that I couldn't recover, that I felt comfortable saying, well, can I work on my voice? Can we work on getting me off the meds? Do I have to be this depressed all the time? What do I need to be asleep right now? Do I need to be, all the things? And that really went a long way towards getting the tailored care that I needed, and the recovery support that I needed, because I didn't think I couldn't recover. So I just felt comfortable saying, here's what I would like to work on.
Which is so important. Because often the recovery, people halt in their recovery process because they just give up, or maybe not knowing where they could actually land, because this is all foreign to you.
And I like that you're mentioning that it seems like only old people have stroke, because it certainly was the case for me when I first read from Google, Dr. G,
Dr. G.
that I was probably having a stroke. and I dismissed it, of course. My first thought was, I'm not old. And also I'm healthy. But in my hospital, everybody who was in the support group and everybody that I saw around on the stroke floor, because at my hospital, they had different levels, so you only saw people with similar diagnoses. And they were all, I would say, easily 70 plus. Nobody was in my age bracket. And so the goals for those people was very different than the goals for me. My goal was to get back to my life, which included work and family. Other people, I heard, their goals were to get back to their gardens. And those are great goals. Those are important goals. But
you have to think of quality of life. You and a 70-year-old have a different quality of life.
Right.
You were teaching dance classes, you're working, you're an attorney, you have a stressful job, you're married, you very fulfilled life. So as a young person, you want to get back to that.
Yeah.
What kept you going?
That's a hard question. It didn't occur to me to not keep going.
That's a great answer. Yeah. Not going is not stop keeping, I can't speak English today. To not keep going is not an option. So I applaud that. I follow Lola on Instagram. I think we went to the same middle school, but we couldn't quite figure out what year we graduate. And then it's funny how the universe just reconnects people. So when Lola came on the show, that's when we actually met as adults. And when we talked on the phone, you know, your speech was fine. I didn't know. And as we're talking about her coming to the studio, and those of you who've been to the studio, you know, it's like on the 75th floor. You have to do so many stairs. So then, you know, I think you asked about the stairs, and I say, oh, why? It's the 4th floor. And that's when you shared that you had suffered a stroke, which again, I found it to be remarkable that you felt comfortable sharing it. And then later on, because I'm not shy, I said, well, do you mind actually sharing your story? Because I think your story can actually touch people. And I really truly believe that it is going to have a positive impact on those watching, because Lola is hope, because you can see she's been through a lot, but she's amazing. And if you follow, you want to share your IG? Yeah,
it's tricky. It's basically LOLA, so it's ELLOH ELLEH.
So did they tell you what kind of stroke you had? Because we know there's different types of strokes.
It was a hemorrhagic stroke, which means it was a leak instead of like a burst of the blood vessels. And apparently, if I'm wrong and you're a doctor, don't come for me. But what I think I understand now is one of the reasons they didn't see it on the MRI initially was because I was bleeding, but then absorbing the blood. So it was leaking slowly, but then going back into the brain in different places. So it wasn't until it really pooled that they really saw. And that's when the seizure started, because I was probably bleeding for, all day.
Yeah. And the brain is such a powerful organ too, that, and again, I'm not a doctor, so don't come for me either. But the body's still trying to recover, and it's kind of like almost fighting against itself. That's why the seizure occurred and so on. At least that's how I understand it. But I could be wrong. I'm so glad that Monet is under the chat. She's telling me how they call birth control in Creole, but she's also saying you're not just a survivor, you're an overcomer. And Monet is your cousin-in-law.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So then so you're at this particular inpatient rehab, I almost said the name. How long were you there, and where were you discharged, and how was life after that?
I was there 8 weeks, and I hated every single minute.
Why?
I was sick.
Yeah.
I was drugged. I was not seeing my family. I hated the food. I couldn't understand why I was feeling the way as I was feeling. Like, I thought the food was always too hot or too cold. Later, I find out one of the troubles I have is moderating temperature. So, this food is, why is this ice cream so cold? I wasn't showering. I was basically in bed all day, except for the therapy, which was very, very challenging. So, I hated it, honestly. I knew it's where I needed to be, because what could I do at home? But I was not happy.
So how are you feeling when you know you're getting closer to discharge? Even though you hate it, but this is a different Lola going home as the one who left prior.
Terrified.
Yeah.
Terrified. In a word, terrified. The closer I got to my discharge date, because they told me I could go home about 4 days before I could actually be discharged. Is that true? No, maybe it was more like 2 weeks. So the goal was to work towards these certain things so that I was safe to go home, like getting in and out of my wheelchair by myself, moving in the wheelchair, because I was still very much not walking, not even standing, and being able to brush my teeth at a sink by myself. So all of these things were goals that we had set for before I could go home. And as the day grew close, when they first told me, I put the countdown on the board, but once the day was getting closer, I was like, I don't want to go home. I'm not ready. Like, I don't have the bed alarm. So if I fall out of bed, because a thing that people may not realize is that when you can't feel your side, it's really hard to know where you are in space. So a couple of times, a nurse or a therapist had come into the room, and I was laying on my arm, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
Or my leg was off the bed just dangling, and I didn't even realize. So but we had a bed alarm so that if I actually fell, somebody would know. But I didn't have that at home. So I thought, what's going to happen when I get home? Like, how much care and how much attention am I going to need?
And is your house wheelchair accessible?
It was not.
Okay.
So
it's a lot of things that people have to think about that we don't think about in the everyday.
right, we ended up having to move while I was in the hospital because I lived in a very old apartment, beautiful, but old Boston style, like this building, 3rd floor, narrow stairs. I don't even think they had handrails on there because it was just like a private house that we were renting. So we had to move, and I'd never seen the place we were moving to before. So all of that was pretty anxiety producing because we had to move to a 1st floor apartment, and everything fell into place that it kind of worked out. We found a place, but the place needed a ramp. We had to purchase one, well, rent one. And the doors are not made for a wheelchair. So we measured everything, but once I got home, turns out even though the chair fit, you can't fit while you have your arms out. You can't fit the chair.
So that's taken away from even your level of being independent.
Yeah.
Because you're not able to wheel yourself in.
That's it. Scooching forward. And you can't turn into like the bathroom because the wheelchair just doesn't quite make the tight turn. So, you know, it was a lot to think about. I didn't know all those things were going to be true before I left, but I was still pretty glad to be going home because I thought, well, I at least want to be able to see people. And we're still in pandemic, so it's not as if I was going to have a party or anything, but I was looking forward to being able to have people come by, be at a distance, and at least like say hello. So that's how I felt.
So, and now I'm going back to your skull, because when you say when you woke up, your skull, a piece of your skull was missing.
Yeah.
So at this point, had they had reconstructive surgery yet, or it was still missing, and so now you're facing going home to a new place that you hadn't seen, it's still the pandemic, and then the goal is for you to go back and have surgery, I'm assuming? Okay.
I had to wear a helmet, first of all, because the skull was not intact. The first terror was having to get into a car in Boston traffic, knowing that my brain was open to the world. So I asked for an ambulance ride, and they said, you can't afford it. It's like, you're probably right.
More reason for people to vote, because when we think about healthcare, we're better off than many states, but we still have a long way to go. But that's a different show.
Yeah, they were like, it's not going to be covered by your insurance because it's not required. Like, you're fine.
You have to have a medical reason.
Yeah.
I say this to people every day.
Anxiety apparently was not a medical reason to be transported home. And I was like, we drive a Honda, like a little Honda. And the feeling of vulnerability, knowing that I was going to have to go back to the world for the first time in 2 months without a very critical piece of anatomy in a Honda.
Were you able to do a car transfer at that time to get into the car? Because I'm thinking if it's low, that requires a lot of maneuvering too.
That was one of the goals, one of the things that we practiced in the rehab. But truth be told, it was not, because they didn't have my car. They just had a simulated car that was something. So, no. So I'm wheeling out towards the car, and I'm like, I don't want to leave, just leave me. But all my stuff is packed up, and my husband's got it all in the car. And we just take our time.
Yeah.
And when we leave, I'm looking around at fresh air, and the world is exposed, and nothing had changed.
Yeah.
This huge thing had happened to me, but nobody knew. People are driving, turning, and because my spatial awareness was so compromised, whenever a car came anywhere towards us, I freaked out. I just wanted to go back to the hospital. For all the times I'd been wanting to go home, I was like, I just live here now. It's fine. So we get home, and my husband, who had moved our whole apartment to this new place.
Shout out to Joey.
A tinier place. So we had boxes mostly put away. And he was like, do you want to unpack? And I'm like, yeah, I think we should. One concern I had was about being able to get around the apartment with the wheelchairs. So the boxes really had to go away very quickly. I'm also not a person who just likes clutter. So I really wanted to put some stuff up. Our friend came up from Rhode Island and helped us put wall art up, and it felt pretty good. And we have so many plants, and it felt pretty homey right away. But it was like walking into a stranger's house. It was a stranger's house. So.
There's so much to unpack with all of this.
Yeah.
I know we only have an hour, but there's so much to unpack, and I'm trying to think of the things that are more poignant for us to talk about, because we have to get to the recovery piece. So then what's the time frame when you're home to get back for surgery, and how many surgery have you had total?
I stopped counting the surgeries that I had.
Wow.
So I also went home with the feeding tube, and we're supposed to clean it.
Yep. So it doesn't get clogged or you'll get an infection?
Yeah. I'm not a medical person.
So
I
they
find that
didn't
really
do any
disgusting.
training?
They did.
Okay.
But
Because of COVID, it was limited. And you went home with the home infusion company, right?
what's the home infusion company?
They supposed to come in to help with managing the tube feeding and with the formula?
Joey got a pamphlet.
Okay.
And my sister brought us some gauze. And I don't know if I was over cleaning or under cleaning.
Wow.
Warm water. It'll be fine. Flush it. Just keep flushing.
Well,
Flush, flush,
you were still using it. You weren't.
No,
okay,
I wasn't
so
using it.
why didn't they remove it?
Apparently, they don't remove it for 6 weeks after you stop being on a tube feed.
Okay.
So I had to keep it. I think I ended up having it for like so long.
Okay.
So long. So that means every time I'm sleeping in this place where I can't feel anything on my side, I'm constantly nervous about having a device that's literally in my belly, in my gut, flopping everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, I keep saying terrifying, but very scary.
Yeah.
So I'm just doing my best to clean it. And at this point, I'm getting all my therapies at home because I can't leave the house because I'm not safe to, because I still don't have my skull. So I start trying to call around and finding out how to get it removed. Turns out only the person who put it in can remove it. And I don't know who that was because I was in the ICU. I was out. Not in the ICU, but the urgent, wherever they take you. Couldn't find the person. It was a project figuring out how to get it removed. Eventually, I have a cousin in medical school. I mean, he's done now. I was like, just come over and pull it out. I mean, he lives in New York, so he was like, I'm not doing that.
You saw my face, right? Okay.
I mean, it couldn't have been worse than what was, which is exactly what they did. They just pulled it out.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done.
But it's the risk of what
Right.
could happen after. So now you're home, you have this tube out, you go back for surgery, and then back and forth. Did you go back to rehab at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of rehab. I'm still in rehab. So once
Well,
I got-
inpatient rehab is what I meant. Yeah, yeah.
No, I didn't have to go back. And people people said that I might have to because sometimes after the surgery you do have to go.
Yeah.
So I have this handy dandy scar that nobody can see at this point.
You can't really
healed
see it.
beautifully.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I did heal.
So I finally get the tube out, get the surgery, and that's when I'm cleared to start doing outpatient therapy. So at that point I'm going 3 times a week for 2 therapies. I'd been discharged from speech because my speech therapist was like, you're doing so well.
What about cognition? Like as far as your processing and thinking, when it first happened, that was all intact. It was mainly the speech.
It was not intact.
It was not intact.
No,
Okay,
no.
so that took time.
Yes, a lot of time. I say a lot of time, but it's been 2 years, which feels like the blink of an eye. But I got to a point where I was doing the prescribed therapies. They have these books and activities that you're supposed to try, and I was knocking them out of the park. So a lot of things that were very difficult and hard, fortunately, that was not the hardest. So it got to the point where my speech therapist, who also works on cognition, said, it seems like at this point you just need to make mistakes doing the things you want to do. So she encouraged me to go back to work. 2 hours a day. I'm a lawyer. You can't do anything in 2 hours a day.
Maybe read not even a brief.
Not even an email or two. But it did force me to, things that were difficult included remembering passwords, logging into devices. When I was first in the hospital, I would have these moments of overwhelm because I couldn't even get my phone to work. A device that's basically been a part of my existence since we got iPhone. I couldn't make a phone call. I couldn't get my iPad to unlock. My family had to put my passcode on the iPad so that the nurses could open them for me when I wanted to watch something on TV. So I started working 2 hours a day, basically a half hour, long break, come back for a half hour. All I could do was turn on my computer, read an email or two, take a long break, and then come back and do like an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon. Eventually I started doing 4 hours a day. Similar, work 2 hours, long break, come back and work 4 hours. I was in bed by 7 p.m. every night. I was exhausted just from that, but it started coming back, you know, eventually. And then I had to have a neuropsych eval. So I met with somebody for 3 hours, and we talked about everything. And
that's part of you being able to be cleared to practice law again.
Correct. The liability insurance, You don't want a lawyer who's got a brain injury that's not.
There's so much for us to talk about, and I know that, you know, I'm so intrigued by the story. I am amazed, and I'm so proud of Lola, and just, you know, I'm inspired by you, you know, being able to live through this. But, you know, I was just flashed that we have maybe 20 minutes left, so I want to at least take a brief break because I want you guys to meet Jenna, who is the trainer who's been working with Lola. That's her partner in recovery is what I'm calling her, because I don't know who's in charge, but they both tell me the other one is in charge. So we want to meet Jenna to hear all about her work with stroke survivors and just Lola's recovery as well. So we'll take a break. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Local. Bcn, c'est télévision pour communauté caribéenne. Bcn, Boston Caribbean Network Television, c'est première télévision communautaire et commerciale qui est là pour promouvoir valeurs culturelles, sociales et historiques pays d'Haïti. Une télévision qui l'a 24/24 pour voir toutes nouvelles nationales et internationales. D'ailleurs, si vous avez aimé produire émission par sur radio ou bien sur télévision BCN, ou t'as aimé nous filmer service dimanche l'église ou pas de problème, juste relais dans 617 290 16 60 617 290 16 60 pour plus d'informations. Et pas oublier, nous sur toutes plateformes tant que Roku, Facebook, Firestick, YouTube et nous sous chaîne 31.3 local. Bcn, c'est télévision pour communauté caribéenne. Bcn, Boston Caribbean Network Television, c'est première télévision communautaire et commerciale qui est là pour promouvoir valeurs culturelles, sociales et historiques pays d'Haïti. Une télévision qui l'a 24/24 pour voir toutes nouvelles nationales et internationales. D'ailleurs, si vous avez aimé produire émission par sur radio ou bien sur télévision BCN, ou t'as aimé nous filmer service dimanche l'église ou pas de problème, juste relais dans 617 290 16 60 617 290 16 60 pour plus d'informations. Et pas oublier, nous sur toutes plateformes tant que Roku, Facebook, Firestick, YouTube et nous sous chaîne 31.3 local. Bcn.
Mercedes, Toyota, Honda et Latrier. Contactez-nous, nous vendons bon bagaille et au pas cher. Nous chita dans Massachusetts 71, John Fitch, Highway Fitchburg, Infoline 978 289 38 75. Ça fait 20 machines au moment, nous c'est net question. Dans le moment, posséder une belle machine, c'est ça tout qu'on t'a souhaité. Parfois, il est difficile pour une compagnie qui compte une machine bien, qui peut réaliser avec vous, qui sait posséder une bonne machine. Aurelov Motors, qui est spécialisé dans la vente machine neuf à usagers, sous besoin de bonne et belle machine, voiture pour camion, contactez-nous quel que soit côté et sur la terre, n'a fait livraison à la caille. Dans Aurelov Motors, nous compte machine et nous vendons machines de qualité, telles que BMW, Mercedes, Toyota, Honda et Latrier. Contactez-nous, nous vendons bon bagaille et au pas cher. Nous chita dans Massachusetts 71, John Fitch, Highway Fitchburg, Infoline 978 289 38 75. Ça fait 20 machines au moment, nous c'est net question. Dans le moment, posséder une belle machine, c'est ça tout le monde a souhaité. C'est ça tout le monde a souhaité. Parfois, il est difficile pour une compagnie qui compte une machine bien, qui peut réaliser avec vous, qui sait posséder une bonne machine. Orelov Motors, qui est spécialisé dans la vente machine neuve et usagée, sous besoin de bonne et belle machine, voiture pour camion, contactez-nous quel que soit côté et sur la terre, n'a fait livraison à la caille. Dans Orelov Motors, nous compte machine, de nouvelles machines de qualité, telles que BMW, Mercedes, Toyota, Honda et Latrier. Contactez-nous, nous vendons bon bagaille et au pas cher. Nous chita dans Massachusetts 71, John Fitch, Highway Fitchburg, Infoline 978 289 38 75. Ça fait 20 machines au moment, nous c'est net question.
Welcome back. Wap gade an koze, c'est Kounyo branché. Moi j'ai un invité spécial avec, c'est avocat Lola Rémy. Mais nous pas parler de loi, je dis on a parlé de expérience Lola t'a fait parce que il était souffert en stroke à 2 years ago. 2 ans de cela. Et nous devons faire chose ça jeudi parce que nous voulons la communauté à information. Nous devons avoir bonne information a few choses prior de stroke. Nous pas jamais penser pour avoir une figure monde qui t'a fait stroke là. Et nous toujours penser c'est grand monde. Nous ouais c'est bon grand monde, sont jeunes monde. Et l'élite souffre stroke ça était dans trentaine. So nous devons penser c'était important pour nous parler, pour nous partager l'histoire là. Elle me dit Lola merci parce que il d'accord pour partager l'histoire là parce que son histoire qui a bon encouragement. Mais pour qu'à ouais tout souffre une fois stroke la vie pas fini, la vie a continué et on continue dans le recovery process là. Il c'est un avocat, il retourne dans le travail normal, il passe en pile, mais quand même il a un esprit qui dit faut continuer bataille. So m'a besoin encourager tout le monde pour nous cas ouais ça l'a fait et puis pour nous comprendre tous les nouveaux signes que nous peut-être pas le stroke pour nous connaître qui ça pour nous faire. So nous dit tout le monde merci parce qu'on branché. So I was just basically saying our friends, welcome back and so on. So I wanted to bring Jenna into the conversation, but why don't you tell us how you got connected to Jenna and how long into the process?
So I was about a year into my recovery, and it was going sort of, and I was getting traditional therapy. I was going to the hospital. I was going 3 days a week and really doing the home exercises because I was taking it all very seriously. But I really was feeling like I wasn't quite getting back to myself. The things I enjoyed, I still wasn't able to do. And in therapy, I also started seeing a therapist, like a therapist. And they really encourage you to find new hobbies.
A therapist for your emotional state. Yeah. I just want to make sure, because I'm always encouraging people. I'm always encouraging people to go to therapy because I think everybody should go to therapy. Yeah. But especially after suffering something so traumatic, that is so important.
Yeah, I was seeing somebody, and she was great. And occupational therapy also. And they were always pushing me to do things that I'd never done before. Try painting, try sitting down more.
Sitting down more?
I don't know.
That's an interesting concept.
That's what it sounded like to me. Watch movies. Like, what do you like? Do you like shows? No, I don't like shows. I like working out. I like dancing. I like yoga. I like walking. I like being in public spaces with my friends and people. So, she'll introduce herself more formally. My brother's wife is a speech and language pathologist, my sister-in-law. And she knows somebody who had worked at Spalding with Jenna years before and had heard that Jenna was starting a project that was fit to function. And so my sister-in-law connected me with her friend, and I just got the information and I just Googled her. And we started working together in November.
Because we were just ahead of your 1 year when you came.
Yeah, November 2021. Yeah, so I sent a message on Facebook, very timid, like, "Hi, what do you think?" Because I'm so timid.
You say it was timid, but what it said was, "How do I get me one of these workouts?" And I was like, "I don't know who this is." But
so everyone, welcome Jenna, who is a therapist. Speech therapist, working very closely with Lola. But Jenna, you are the founder, and you are also the face of Fit to Recovery.
Fit to function.
Fit to function. Again, language is not. Okay. It's a good thing I have a speech therapist next to me because you're gonna help me. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate you taking the time chatting with us because I think this will impact the community in such a positive way. And I also stalk both of them on Facebook, and I see, and you guys really should check out Lola's Instagram page because you can see the progress. And I love when you do these videos of showing how it was in 2020 and where you are now. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me about Fit to Recovery.
Fit to Function.
Fit to Function.
It's on the shirt. It's here.
Can't see it. Fit to Function. Thank you. Fit to Function. So tell us about Fit to Function.
So try to make a short version of it. I'm a speech and language pathologist. I'm a certified brain injury specialist, and I'm a level 2 CrossFit trainer. About halfway through my career in medicine and rehab working with brain injury, I started doing CrossFit, became a trainer, and really quickly saw that the gym is just a place that's ripe with opportunity for people in recovery of all kinds. So I started bringing in stroke and brain injury survivors kind of one at a time into the gym to just see what can we do here to kind of help move that functional recovery along. And Fit to Function was really born out of that. In all of my years in rehab, I worked, well, I won't name the rehab that we're not naming.
We're not doing
We're not doing that, but I worked in acute rehab in the type of setting that Lola was in for those 8 weeks. And I work in an acute care hospital where I see folks right after they've had their stroke. And in all of my years of doing that, what was really apparent was that there just isn't enough out there for people in their recovery that medicine and rehabilitation kind of gets folks, and the limitations really come from insurance, but they get them to a place where they kind of say, you're good enough. That's good enough, and send folks home. And good enough is not really good enough for people. As we talked about Lola, being this young stroke survivor who works and does fitness and has all of these kind of dreams and goals ahead, and thinking to say, oh, well, you're going home now, you can walk with a cane, and that's enough. And the idea behind Fit to Function is really there's a way for folks to find a recovery that's better than just good enough, and we're using functional fitness as a means for that.
And so you've been working with Lola for about 1.5 years. So kind of walk us through even Lola's progress.
So when Lola reached out, she said her message, how do I get one of these workouts? And I said, well, where are you located? Come on over. And I remember some hesitancy even in your initial getting it scheduled, because she was still in some therapy and was sort of like, where does this pick up? Where does it interact? I'm not really sure. I don't want to be doing too much. And I just said, just come. Just come and let's see what we can do. And Lola came in. One of the first stories she told me that a week or two before, she had been looking at what she called her beloved set of kettlebells and had considered selling them because she thought, I'll never use these again.
That must have been devastating, the thought of that.
And one of the things that, in addition to being a CrossFit trainer, I'm also what's called an adaptive and inclusive trainer. And so what that means is my role is to provide access to fitness, right? So no matter what your physical or cognitive limitations are that may feel like, oh, I can't do that because I can't move how I once was or I once did, my job is to provide access to the movement in a way that feels safe and comfortable and helps you move forward. And so one of the first things we did was put kettlebells in Lola's hands.
How did that feel the first time?
It really is scary.
Because that was the first thing you tried to grab and you couldn't. And then you're thinking something's wrong, and now you...
It was a moment of return, sort of like...
And I think that whole first session, and what I do in the initial for folks is we go over what is a functional movement, right? And these are things that we see out there in everyday life. So what's a deadlift? It's just picking up a heavy object off the floor, and we all have to do that sometimes. What's a squat? It's just sitting down. It's standing up off the toilet. It's getting into the car. And even a burpee is just getting down to the ground, or it's a controlled fall and getting up when you fall. So we kind of went through modifications for all of those movements, and for pretty much all of them, Lola said, I can't do that. I can't do that. And I said, well, we have to try. And also, you can't do it yet is the idea, right? And so we kind of scaled and modified the movements in a way that she felt safe and comfortable. And before you know it, she's picking up a heavy kettlebell and squatting to a low box. And the last thing we did was get down to the floor and back up again, even though she told me that was not something she was able to do. And we went from there to here.
No, I watch the videos, and every time you post them, I'm still amazed, because clearly I don't really like working out. But, I think it's inspiring, and, it just, there's a level of like just you being determined to keep going. Because even with your left hand right now, that you're working a lot with getting the strength back, and people don't realize how much, how quick we can lose the strength and how long it takes to recover.
And I think what happens, and, there are a couple things that happen in standard medical care and rehab, right? The first thing is we need to keep you safe. We need to get you functional but keep you safe and send you home in a way that you can kind of do the things you need to do. But there's two key elements that leaves out. One is working on the things you want to work on. So for Lola wanting to work on that left arm, although in rehab they probably really weren't, because they're like, this isn't the focus. The focus is we're going to teach you how to do stuff with your right hand. We're going to send you home. We're going to make sure you don't fall. This is how you do things safely, right? So then Lola gets into the gym and we're like, well, why wouldn't we work on the left hand? Why wouldn't we practice holding things, pressing things? And we were doing that right away. And I get it, you know, there are limits to what rehab can provide, but taking into account what the person wants to be working on. And there would be days when we'd spend 30 minutes doing just exercises for that arm. Did we always get like a hard CrossFit style workout that day? Maybe not. But it was really about what do we need to focus on? What's going to help Lola move forward? And Lola always brings goals to sessions. So we have a combination.
Full of goals.
Full of goals.
That's great,
Say that
though.
about you.
That's awesome. I mean, I think we joked about who's in charge, but it's such a collaboration with the two of you where you have your goals of what you want to accomplish, and then you are an instrument to help guide her and provide that support. Tell us about some of the things that you offer at Fit to Function. Did I do it right this time?
Yeah, you got it. Nailed it. Look, you even checked your work. So, you know, the base level, like I said, is that functional movement, right? So movements that we see out there in everyday life, we take them in the gym, we modify them to your limitation, and then we apply intensity, right? There's a lot of evidence out there now that the brain actually learns better. Patterns and added intensity, because we talk about, as an example, Lola's working on changing her walking, right? And there's been an evolution in that since the time that we met. And you can go into a PT in a clinic kind of setting and do your drills. But until you apply a little bit of intensity and a little bit of need to navigate a certain situation, move a little faster, make it a little harder, the brain doesn't adapt as well. So we take all of the functional movements, all of the goals that you bring in, we work on really specific skills. You know, Lola comes in like full of goals, as she said, but you know, I have folks who say, you know, I had a stroke survivor who travel made her really worried because she couldn't sit on low seats. She couldn't get off of a toilet without a handrail. So every time she comes in, we work on squatting to a lower and lower target and how to work on that. I have another survivor who one of his goals is to get back to playing golf and carrying his bag. And he can walk, but he can't carry that load on an uneven surface. So we take that, we're like, how can we find something unstable and loaded, put it in the gym, work on it in a skill way, and then build it into intensity. So the range is vast in terms of what we do.
I like that the treatment plan is so personal, that you don't have just a cookie cutter of like, okay, this is what we offer, but everybody comes with their own goals. Now, what's the age demographic that you work with? Is there my athletes, and I call them all athletes, and somebody once said to me, wow, everyone who was a former athlete that had a stroke came to you? I'm like, no, when you step into my gym, you're an athlete. I love that. That's powerful.
Right, it is. It's really, it's empowering, right? Because you are an athlete. You're here, you're doing sport. It's the sport of fitness, but it's sport and it's challenging. And my athletes currently range from age 12 to 80.
12 to 80.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a cluster, I would say, of around 35 to 45. I have a lot of stroke survivors right in sort of this age group who have that shared experience of like, old people have strokes. And everyone shares the same thing when they come, which is, you know, I'd go to support groups and everyone was old, or I didn't find a lot of peers, or no one seems to have the same goals. I want to go and do all of these things.
So I just want to offer one thing, which I didn't realize that people didn't realize until a week ago. My friend came to our group fitness class. And I think people don't realize your training is one-on-one. It's all one-on-one. So there are these monthly classes which are amazing, and you're welcome to bring a guest. But it's able to be that personal because it is a personal session.
Right.
So how can people get connected to you?
You know, it's as simple as outreach, whether it's through Instagram, send me an email, send me a text, get in touch with an athlete. A lot of folks come through, they find another athlete and they say, oh, Lola sent me, or so-and-so. But I always tell people the first session is free, it's no commitment, so just come try it. And I started this in 2019, I have a 90% success rate on return. People come for the first free trial and they go, yeah, I'm in. So I just say, just come and just see. And I do in-person services, so one-on-one in the gym. We do the free group class once a month. I also see people around the world, either doing Zoom sessions, virtual sessions, or just virtual coaching where I send them workouts or skills that they can do at home. So there's a real range of service, and I tailor it to what someone needs because there isn't a perfect script for recovery. So I like to keep it open. When people say, I'm not sure what I'll need, I say, just come in and we'll figure it out.
I love that. And just so people know, there is a limitation when it comes to insurance companies because, you suffer a stroke, you go to the hospital, then you get sent. And just a little clarification from talking to Lola earlier, she did go to an LTAC and then went to acute rehab, which was the right order. So I won't be mad at that.
We don't have to write a letter.
So, but after that, even with inpatient therapy, outpatient therapy, that's covered, and then people are done. But this is an extension, which it's a great option to have, and I wanted Jenna to be here. So you guys can see, it doesn't end with outpatient therapy. You have an option to pay out of pocket if you have goals that you want to continue to work towards, because the plan is always to get your highest level of independence back. And so it never stops. The recovery continues.
Right.
So
can I add to that?
Absolutely, yes.
And I think old sort of lore and what a lot of medical studies are based on and what a lot of survivors hear or are told is that the most recovery you're going to get is in those 6 months to a year, and that's your best recovery, and then after that recovery kind of tails off, and it's simply not true. What we every day, and what we know about
said it too.
We're all a little guilty as charged, right? But what we know is that the neuroplasticity, the brain has infinite recovery abilities, and if you continue to push and fight for it and do the things that will help your brain grow and learn, and we know now from science that fitness actually helps build new neural pathways and helps the brain learn, that recovery potential is infinite as well.
That's amazing. So again, if you're watching, you've suffered a stroke, you heard it from the expert. So don't stop. Keep moving, keep going, because there's more recovery that can happen. Any last words that you want to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, right? But I think, the sort of motto for my business is better than good enough. And what I tell people is
better than good enough.
Better than good enough. And I tell people that, the gym is a place that provides opportunity to find that better than good enough sort of recovery, but that it's a mentality for everyone, right? We can all be better and better than just sort of, that's good enough in the things that we want to achieve. So if you take that and you apply that mentality to recovery, I want more, and I think survivors want more, they're just not always offered the opportunity, and I think taking fitness as an opportunity to build that is a really powerful tool.
Can I add something to your...
absolutely.
So we're talking about stroke. It's Stroke Awareness Month.
Yeah.
But Jenna actually works with lots of brain injuries of all kinds. So if you're watching this, or you know somebody who's been like a car accident and had a traumatic brain injury, or has a spinal cord injury, or something like that.
MS, Parkinson's, CP, brain cancer, spinal cancers, all kinds of, and really anything. Sometimes people say, I don't know if this is for me, and I'm like, it's for you, come, right? Because it's really for everybody and everybody.
So pour moun kap gade yo, si anglais a pas trop fort pour, m'veut konnen que demoiselle sa ki la, madame sa ki la, li se yon speech therapist, mais li yon business en privé que li aide en pile monde. Non seulement moun qui souffri, qui te fait stroke déjà, but si ou gen MS, si ou gen l'autre différentes maladies que li affecte physiquement, juste pour information, connecter avec et puis là pour si li marche pour, then ou juste poser question et pour konnen occasion de ba ki ka aide pour continuer faire progrès dans recovery. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Fit to Function on IG, on Facebook. I finally got it right. Fit to Function. Jenna's amazing because I actually did reach out to her for a friend, and you did respond pretty quickly. So, she is responsive, and she does amazing work because I see it all the time on your IG. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
And
the first one is free. We like $3.99.
We do.
Do you have any last words for our friends? I feel like there's so much more I want to ask. Maybe we'll do a second.
You need an episode. Yeah, round 2.
We'll do a round 2. Well, actually, before we go, where are you right now in your recovery? What are the things that you in? Because I know we talked about you being wheelchair bound and so on. Where are you right now so the folks can know?
So we went from 3 days a week, 2 different therapies, to now I go once every other week, because I'm still getting a lot. So I take breaks, also the insurance. I take breaks And every 6 months or so, we put a little bit of a pause on it. Well, for about 6 months, we put a pause on it. But then I go back in for a re-eval, and we set some new goals. So that's what's happening in the clinical side. I still see Jenna once a week for an hour, and same, I'm just taking what I'm getting as assignments from the clinical piece and looking at how it impacted me. Like, was I on the T and felt unsafe? Like, was I feeling unstable and I couldn't find a seat? Or how can I tweak this better? How can I get this hand to be closing doors? So I just bring that in, so we work on those. So that's what I'm doing. Still doing a lot of stuff at home.
You cooked. I think I watched you made, was it a pot roast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm cooking, which is one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
So been able to do that. I made a chili this morning, so
It's awesome. You didn't bring me any, but that's okay.
Sorry.
But you are walking without a device.
Walking without a device, which is not the case when we first met. I was using a device, which I'm so glad I was able to get, but it wasn't something I wanted to be carrying around long term. So I've been done with that. I'm also no longer wearing my arm sling because I wasn't finding it very helpful, and I can actually be able to integrate my arm more without having the sling. So doing that. Yoga. I'm back teaching yoga once a week. I'm back on the bike. So I was a spin instructor, like a, what do they call it? Stationary bike. So that was my outlet. If I'm not having a great day, I want 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise, I would love to get on the bike and just crank it and get my music on. And that was something that I lost during the stroke recovery. My therapist really wanted me to try it with all these things like step on a stool. It was just more work than it was worth at that point. But after gaining a little bit of strength, Jenna offered it in the gym. I was really against it. I didn't want to bother because it was taking me like 30 minutes to get on, and I was so weak and so tired. I gave up. She didn't let up. She doesn't let up. Yeah. So then a few months later, we tried it again, and she like literally had to hold my foot on the pedal to make it work. And I had fun. So that reminded me that I could probably try it. So I've been doing that. So I'm doing that probably like 4 days a week at home by myself. I'm going to a gym by myself. The gym that I used to teach at, that I'm back teaching at now.
Wow.
I can go there and like have a very good workout on my own, using the tools and the skills that we've learned, feeling more safe being around heavy things and my ability to be stable and balanced, and ask for help also. That's another thing that I've learned, and just it's okay to say, hey, could you help me bring down this kettlebell, because I really want to do 50 pounds, but I can't do 50 pounds with one arm from overhead. If a tall person racks it up here, I can't bring it down. So I can always reach out to people. So that's been an improvement as well.
That's awesome. What are some words, last words that you have to share with our audience who are watching, who's been watching us?
Gambe for Gambe Fem.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Big thanks to Lola and Jenna for being my guests today. One of the things that I wanted to make sure to remind you guys, if you ever experience any of these symptoms, like excessive headache that's not going away, or any left-sided weakness, or any weakness on any side, you should act fast. And FAST stands for
Face. Arm. Speech.
You can be louder.
Time. I was giving Lola, it was like a test.
I don't know them.
It was a test for Lola.
Okay.
Clearly I was not fast.
So face, act.
Face, arm. Speech, time. We always say in the hospital, time is brain.
Absolutely. So first thing, you call 911. Call 911 because you can get the first care. So that's important. You don't want to wait. Time is of the essence. Merci pour avec Lola, avec Jenna qui te vini dans show aujourd'hui. Je souhaite que vous te apprendre nos bagages, mais ça me besoin encourager les amis tap garder. Si vous sentez ou peut-être fait mal qui pas jamais voulez aller, ou bien ou gen dans corps ou senti qui gon faiblesse que j'ont te ka utiliser ou pas ka utiliser encore, l'important pour faire 911 pour venir parce que pour ka checker en pile fois time is of the essence lié do pour ka joindre ni pi bonheur pour ka aider. M'da souhaite nous te encourager parce que ou ka ouais Jenna is a survivor. She is thriving. Ou ka wè histoire li an li dou li komanse li fin fè, stroke lan li fè seizure, li ale nan rehab, li te son chaise roulante, li tap utilize walker. Kounya lap marché. So, she's inspiring and she's inspiring me. I'll go to the gym tomorrow.
I'm going to wait for you. I'm teaching tomorrow.
Well, I don't know about that. But, nous besoin encourager, nous prendre soin tête nous. L'important pour nous prendre soin tête nous, l'important tout pour nous prendre information, parler avec docteur et pas ignorer leurs sentir un symptôme. Parce que 911 qui a sauvé la vie ou pas jamais connaît. Je me souhaite que vous apprendre et vous encourager pendant le choix. Je vous passe une très bonne journée. Merci pour ce que vous avez branché. Après l'autre semaine.
C'est télévision pour communauté caribéenne. BC
Massachusetts 71, John Fitch, Highway Fitchburg, Infoline 978 289 38 75. Ça fait 20 machines au moment, nous c'est mettre question.
24 pour voir toutes nouvelles nationales et internationales. D'ailleurs, si vous avez aimé produire émission par sur radio ou bien sur télévision BCN, ou avez aimé nous filmer service dimanche l'église ou, pas de problème. Juste relais dans 617 290 16 60. 617 290 16 60 pour plus d'informations. Et pas oublier, nous sur toutes plateformes tant que Roku, Facebook, Firestick, YouTube et nous sous chaîne 31.3 local. BCN, c'est télévision pour communauté caribéenne. BCN, Boston Caribbean Network Television, c'est première télévision communautaire et commerciale qui est là pour promouvoir valeurs culturelles, sociales et historiques pays d'Haïti. Une télévision qui l'a 24/24 pour voir toutes nouvelles nationales et internationales. D'ailleurs, si vous avez aimé produire émission par sur radio ou bien sur télévision BCN, ou avez aimé nous filmer service dimanche l'église ou, pas de problème. Juste relais dans 617 290 16 60. 617 290 16 60 pour plus d'informations.
La mort, un passage obligé. Pour un être cher qui est parti tôt ou tard, la célébration de sa vie se fait avec des funérailles somptueuses qui apaisent les douleurs de la famille. Riley Antoine Funeral Home, c'est l'entreprise idéale où doit choisir pour bailler un dernier adieu à une famille et un ami qui malheureusement est parti pour l'au-delà. Service exceptionnel. Depuis choix cercueil, cimetière, embaumage, arrangement de fleurs, exposition, annonce de décès dans le journal, tout ça a fait avec soin, rapidité et à prix abordable. Non, moment à traverser une douleur si profonde, confier service funérailles by professionnel dans Riley Antoine Funeral Home 171 Humbolave, Dorchester. Yo ouvri 24 heures sur 24. Téléphone 617 427 56 25. La mort, un passage